Last Night in the Death Tunnel, Part 1. October 2019. Cold wind moved slowly across the dark hills outside Louisville. The road leading up the hill was empty, silent, and surrounded by dense trees that barely moved in the night air. At the top of that hill stood one of the most infamous abandoned buildings in America, the massive shadow of Waverly Hills Sanatorium. For decades, the building had been surrounded by terrifying stories. Whispers of footsteps, shadow figures, voices echoing through empty corridors, and the most disturbing place of all, the Death Tunnel. A long underground passage once used to secretly transport bodies out of the hospital during the tuberculosis epidemic of the early 1900s. Thousands of patients had died inside those walls, and according to many investigators, some of them never left. A black SUV slowly climbed the narrow road toward the sanatorium. Inside the car were three people: Ryan Carter, Lucas Hill, and Maya Torres. All three were paranormal investigators who ran a small but growing YouTube channel called Midnight Evidence. Ryan, the leader of the group, was obsessed with documenting unexplained phenomena. Lucas handled the equipment and cameras. Maya was the skeptic. She didn't believe in ghosts, but she believed in evidence, and tonight they planned to collect it. Ryan parked the SUV near the rusted front gate of the property. The headlights illuminated the massive structure ahead. 5 floors of broken windows, cracked walls, and dark, empty openings that looked like hollow eyes staring down at them. For a moment, none of them spoke. Lucas finally broke the silence. "Okay, I knew it was big," he said quietly. "But this place looks like something out of a nightmare." Ryan smiled slightly. "That's exactly why we're here." Maya stepped out of the vehicle and looked up at the building. Cold wind pushed through the trees around them. "This place treated tuberculosis patients in the early 1900s, she said. "Over 6,000 people died here. And tonight," he said nervously, "3 more idiots are walking inside." Ryan laughed. "Relax. It's just an abandoned hospital." But even as he said it, something about the building felt wrong. Not dangerous, just uncomfortable. Like the entire hill didn't want them there. They reached the front entrance. The heavy wooden doors were partially broken and hanging open. Ryan turned on the main camera. The red recording light blinked. "All right," he said into the lens. "October 12th, 2019. We're standing outside Waverly Hills Sanatorium, one of the most haunted locations in the United States." The wind whistled through broken windows somewhere above them. "Our goal tonight," Ryan continued, "is to explore the building and spend several hours near the entrance of the infamous death tunnel." Lucas zoomed the camera toward the dark doorway behind Ryan. "The tunnel that once carried thousands of bodies out of this hospital." Maya crossed her arms. "Or," she said, "a tunnel that people turned into a ghost story. Well, tonight we find out." The temperature dropped immediately. The air smelled like dust and old concrete. Their footsteps echoed through the enormous empty lobby. Flashlights revealed broken furniture, rusted hospital beds, and old equipment scattered across the floor. The ceiling above them creaked slightly. Lucas whispered quietly, "Tell me that was just the wind." Ryan shrugged. "Probably. But something about the sound lingered in the air, like the building itself had shifted." They moved deeper into the sanatorium. The corridors were long and narrow. Rows of empty patient rooms stretched endlessly on both sides. Most doors had rotted away long ago. Inside the rooms were metal bed frames, peeling paint, and shattered glass. Ryan spoke softly while filming. "This hospital opened in 1910 to treat tuberculosis patients. At the time, TB was one of the deadliest diseases in America. The treatment back then was mostly fresh air and isolation. Lucas looked down the hallway, and when patients died, he pointed toward the lower levels of the building. So they built a hidden underground passage. Lucas swallowed. The death tunnel. Ryan nodded. Exactly. They reached the staircase leading to the upper floors. As they climbed, the building seemed to grow colder. The air felt heavier. By the time they reached the third floor, Lucas suddenly stopped walking. Did you hear that? Ryan turned. Hear what? Lucas raised a finger. All three stood completely still. For several seconds there was nothing but silence. Then, a faint sound echoed through the hallway. Very distant. Very soft. A laugh. A child's laugh. Maya immediately shook her head. No, that was the wind. But Lucas's face had gone pale. That wasn't wind. Ryan slowly turned the camera toward the dark hallway ahead. The laughter had stopped. But the feeling remained, like something had just been watching them, and had now stepped back into the shadows. Ryan whispered quietly, "Okay, that was strange." Maya rolled her eyes, though her voice sounded less confident now. Old buildings make weird noises. Lucas looked down the hallway again. I've been filming abandoned buildings for 6 years. He swallowed. I've never heard anything like that. Ryan kept the camera pointed forward. Let's keep moving. At the end of the hallway, they found an old metal door partially open. A rusted sign hung beside it. It read, "Service access, lower level." Ryan smiled slowly. "Well," he said, "I think we just found the way to the death tunnel." Lucas groaned. "Great." Maya stepped forward and pushed the door open. A staircase descended into darkness. Cold air flowed up from below. Ryan aimed his flashlight down the stairs. The beam disappeared into blackness, and from somewhere deep underground a faint metallic sound echoed upward, like something dragging slowly across the floor. None of them spoke for a moment. Then Lucas whispered quietly, "Please tell me that was just a rat." Ryan didn't answer, because the sound came again, louder this time. Skrrr, ape. Something moving in the darkness below them, waiting. Part 2. The Descent. For several seconds, none of them moved. The dark staircase in front of them seemed to swallow the light from Ryan's flashlight. The beam barely reached halfway down the steps before disappearing into pure blackness. Then the sound came again. Skrrr, ape. Metal dragging slowly across concrete. Lucas whispered nervously, "Okay, that definitely wasn't a rat." Ryan kept the camera steady, pointing down the stairs. Could be debris falling. Maya didn't look convinced. Debris doesn't drag across the floor. Cold air flowed up from the tunnel below them. It carried a strange smell, not exactly rot, but something damp, old, and heavy. Ryan finally took the first step down. The wooden stair creaked loudly under his weight. "Stay close," he said quietly. Lucas adjusted the shoulder camera and followed. Maya came last. As they descended, the sounds of the upper floors slowly faded away. The deeper they went, the quieter the building became, until the only thing they could hear was their own breathing and the echo of their footsteps. Step, step, step. Each sound bounced off the concrete walls like someone else was walking beside them. Halfway down the staircase, Lucas suddenly stopped. "Guys?" Ryan turned. "What?" Lucas looked up the stairs behind them. Did someone just move up there? The stairwell above them was empty. Dust floated slowly in the beam of light. Nothing moved. "Probably just the building settling," Ryan said. Lucas nodded slowly, but he kept glancing behind them as they continued downward at the bottom of the stairs. The tunnel entrance finally came into view. A long concrete corridor stretched ahead into darkness. This was the infamous death tunnel beneath Waverly Hills Sanatorium. The tunnel was wider than Ryan expected. Nearly 10 feet across, old metal rails still ran along the center of the floor. They were once used to transport carts carrying bodies out of the hospital. Lucas stared at the rails. Thousands of bodies moved through here, he muttered. Maya shined her flashlight along the walls. Water dripped slowly from cracks in the concrete. The air felt even colder down here. Ryan spoke quietly to the camera. This tunnel runs almost 500 feet down the hill toward the forest outside Louisville. Lucas swallowed. And we're walking all the way through it? That's the plan. They began moving forward. Their footsteps echoed loudly inside the tunnel. Each step created long, hollow sounds that lingered in the darkness behind them. The deeper they walked, the more the temperature dropped. Soon their breath became visible in the cold air. Lucas rubbed his arms. Why is it so cold down here? 42 degrees. Ryan frowned. But it's almost 60 outside. The temperature difference made no sense. But they kept moving. About 50 feet into the tunnel, Ryan suddenly stopped. He raised his hand. Quiet. Lucas and Maya froze. Ryan tilted his head slightly. Listen. At first, there was nothing. Just silence. Then, very faint, very distant, footsteps. Coming from deeper in the tunnel. Slow. Heavy. Step. Step. Lucas whispered. Are you kidding me right now? Ryan called out loudly. Hello. His voice echoed down the tunnel. Hello. 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 No response. But the footsteps continued, still coming toward them. Maya frowned. Maybe another group of investigators. Lucas shook his head. There were no other cars outside. Ryan lifted the camera. Let's see. He aimed the flashlight down the tunnel. The beam stretched far into the darkness. But nothing appeared. No people. No movement. Yet the footsteps continued. Slowly approaching. Step. Step. Then suddenly, they stopped. Complete silence returned. Lucas exhaled slowly. That was not funny. You still think it's just the wind? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stared down the tunnel. For the first time since they arrived, she looked uneasy. They continued walking. Another 100 feet passed. The tunnel curved slightly to the right. That's when Lucas noticed something strange. Guys. What? Lucas pointed at the floor behind them. Their footprints were clearly visible in the thin dust, but beside their tracks, there was another set. Ryan knelt down. The prints looked smaller, almost like a child's footprints. Maya stared. That's impossible, Lucas whispered. We just walked here, and those prints are behind us. None of them had seen anyone else in the tunnel, yet the footprints continued for several feet beside their own. Then suddenly, they stopped, as if whoever made them had simply vanished. Lucas looked around nervously. Okay, I officially hate this place. Let's keep moving. But now the tunnel felt different, heavier, like the darkness itself was watching them. About 20 minutes later, they reached the deepest part of the tunnel. The air here felt extremely cold, almost freezing. Maya checked the thermometer again. 38 degrees. Ryan frowned. That's impossible. Lucas turned the camera toward the far end of the tunnel. That's the exit down there. A small opening was barely visible in the distance. Moonlight faintly touched the floor near the far entrance. Ryan nodded. All right, let's film here for a few minutes. Lucas placed the camera on a tripod. Maya set up an audio recorder. Ryan turned off his flashlight. The tunnel fell into darkness. Only the faint light from the distant exit remained. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, a whisper. so soft it barely existed. Lucas stiffened. Did you hear that? Yes. Maya looked around. What? Then the whisper came again. This time clearer. A single word. Hello. Lucas's face turned pale. That didn't come from us. The tunnel ahead was empty. But the whisper came again. Closer. Hello. And this time, it sounded like a child's voice. Maya whispered slowly. Someone is down here. No. He pointed behind them. Because that voice came from back there. Lucas slowly turned the camera toward the darkness behind them. The beam of light moved across the tunnel wall, then stopped. At the far end of the tunnel behind them, something stood in the darkness. A small shape, about the size of a child, not moving. Just standing there, watching them. Lucas whispered, "Ryan?" Ryan followed the camera's direction, and his stomach dropped. The figure was still there. A small girl, long dark hair, a pale dress, her head tilted slightly to one side. Ryan slowly raised the flashlight. The light touched the figure. For one brief second, they saw her face, empty eyes, completely black. Then the flashlight flickered, and the figure disappeared. Gone. Lucas grabbed the camera. "We need to leave." Ryan didn't argue, because from somewhere deeper inside the tunnel a new sound had begun. Not footsteps, not whispers, something else. A low dragging noise, like something large, slowly crawling toward them. Final part. The dragging sound grew louder, slow, heavy, like something enormous pulling itself across the concrete floor. Ryan tightened his grip on the flashlight. "Everyone, stay behind me." Lucas grabbed the camera with shaking hands. "Ryan, we should leave now." Maya nodded. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't a child. The walls seemed closer, the air colder. Ryan slowly aimed the flashlight deeper into the tunnel. The beam stretched across the concrete floor and stopped. Something had appeared there. Marks, long scratches across the ground. Fresh ones. They hadn't been there a few minutes earlier. Lucas whispered, "Those weren't there before." Ryan nodded slowly. "They're leading toward us." The dragging sound came again. Closer now. Scrape. The sound echoed through the tunnel like metal grinding against stone. Maya stepped backward. "We're leaving." "Yeah, let's go." They quickly packed the equipment. Lucas lifted the camera and turned toward the staircase that led back to the hospital above. But the moment the camera light hit the tunnel wall, he froze. Ryan looked over. What? 3 long shadows stretched across the concrete. Ryan counted them. 1, 2, 3. But there were only 3 people standing there, and the shadows didn't match their positions. One of them stood slightly behind the group, Lucas whispered. "That shadow isn't ours." Maya turned slowly. The tunnel behind them was empty, but the shadow on the wall moved. It shifted slightly, like someone taking a step. Ryan's heart began pounding. Move. All 3 started walking quickly toward the stairs. Their footsteps echoed loudly in the tunnel. Behind them, another set of footsteps joined. Slow, heavy. Lucas turned the camera behind them. The beam of light shook as he moved. The tunnel looked empty, but the sound of footsteps kept following them. Step, step, step. Ryan walked faster. The stairs were about 50 feet away now, but something strange began happening. The temperature dropped again. Lucas checked the thermometer on his device. 30 degrees, what the hell? Then Maya suddenly grabbed Ryan's arm. "Wait." Ryan stopped. "What?" "Small ones. Child-sized. They appeared one by one in the dust. Right in front of them, like someone invisible was walking toward them. Step. A new footprint appeared. Step. Another one, Lucas whispered in horror. It's walking right toward us. Ryan slowly raised the flashlight. Hello? The footprint stopped. The tunnel became silent again. Then suddenly, a loud metallic crash exploded behind them. Lucas spun the camera around. What was that? Ryan turned too. Something had fallen somewhere deeper in the tunnel. And then, the whisper returned. Soft. Right beside them. Stay. Lucas merely dropped the camera. That was right next to me. Maya grabbed his arm. Run. They ran. Their footsteps thundered through the tunnel. The staircase was just ahead now, but behind them, something else started moving. Fast. The dragging sound turned into heavy rushing movement, like something enormous charging through the darkness. Lucas shouted, "It's coming." Ryan reached the bottom step. Go! Lucas glanced back while running. The camera light bounced wildly across the tunnel behind them. For one brief second, the light caught something moving. A tall shape, dark, long arms dragging across the ground. Lucas screamed, "Ryan!" They burst through the metal door at the top of the stairs and slammed it shut. The sound behind them stopped instantly. The building above was silent again. Ryan leaned against the door, breathing heavily. Lucas placed the camera down. What was that thing? No one answered, because something else was happening now. The hallway lights from their flashlights began flickering. Maya frowned. That's not good. Then, a laugh echoed down the corridor. The same child's laugh they heard earlier. Lucas turned slowly. At the far end of the hallway, the little girl stood again. White dress, dark hair. But this time she wasn't alone. Two tall shadow figures stood behind her. Ryan whispered, "Don't move." The girl slowly raised her hand and pointed directly at them. Lucas felt his chest tighten. Then the shadows behind the girl began stretching along the walls, growing larger, longer, like something trying to crawl out of the darkness. Ryan grabbed the equipment. Now we leave. They ran down the hallway, past broken rooms, past empty hospital beds. The laughter followed them the entire way. Finally, they reached the front entrance. Ryan pushed the doors open. Cold night air rushed in. They ran across the parking area toward the SUV. Lucas threw the equipment into the back seat. Ryan started the engine immediately. The headlights illuminated the massive building once again. For a moment, they all looked back. At the top floor window, a figure stood watching them. Tall, thin, and completely black. Lucas whispered, "Drive." Ryan pressed the accelerator. The car sped down the hill away from Waverly Hills Sanatorium, outside Louisville. None of them spoke for several minutes. Finally, Lucas broke the silence. "Tell me the camera recorded all that." Ryan nodded. "It did." Maya stared out the window. "But we're not posting it, because whatever was in that tunnel noticed us." 3 days later, Ryan reviewed the footage. At first, everything looked normal, but when the group reached the deepest part of the tunnel, the video showed something terrifying. Behind them, 3 tall shadow figures slowly walking along the tunnel wall, following them. The entire time. Ryan closed the laptop. He never uploaded the footage, and he never returned to Waverly Hills Sanatorium again. Because one frame of the video showed something even worse. Near the very end of the tunnel footage, just before they started running, the camera captured something standing directly behind Ryan. A tall black figure, its face inches from the camera, smiling.